Inforia Islami. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. You're with me, Mazina Ismail. Every Saturday and Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. we have English section brought to you by IKIM. And this week on Sunday at 6 p.m. we have Men and Nature, a program to share with you with our guest, Dr. Shaikh Muhammad Saifuddeen bin Shaikh Muhammad Salleh, the Senior Fellow, Director, Centre for Science and Environment Studies at IKIM. And last week we have given an introduction on this topic titled Nurturing Nature, Guidance from Islam. And this week we'll be talking on the second part of discussion on Nurturing Nature, Guidance from Islam. So before we start, Assalamualaikum, Dr. Shaikh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
How are you?
I'm good, Alhamdulillah. How are you today?
Great, Alhamdulillah. Thank you. So before we start on our second part, probably would you like to give a brief recap on last week's discussion, Dr. Shaikh?
Right, thank you, Hajah Mazlina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon. It is indeed a pleasure to be able to go on air again in Men and Nature today. And as Hajah Mazlina mentioned, today we'll be continuing our discussion on nurturing nature, guidance from Islam. Now, if we recall in last week's discussion, our focus was primarily on the responsibility and also the role of mankind as Khalifah, and how this responsibility relates to the three-dimensional relationship of man and Allah, between man and also between man and the environment. Each of these responsibilities actually highlight the fact that they are dependent and also interrelated with one another. For example, if we were to look at our relationship with Allah, if the relationship that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is good, then this would be translated into a good relationship that we have with our fellow man, and also the relationship that we have with the environment. We would not do anything that would be detrimental to the environment, as this would certainly go against the teaching of Islam. Now, inshallah, Hajah Maslina, in today's discussion, we will continue to discuss this issue by looking at how the environment relates to a number of branches of knowledge in Islam.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, last week you said that we know Islam provides guidance in the form of normative principles regarding safeguarding the natural world. Would you please elaborate further on this?
Okay, thank you. Now, in discussing the guidance provided by Islam to safeguard the natural world, we cannot avoid from discussing the normative ethical principles in Islam, which act, whether directly or indirectly, as the basis for the management of the natural world. Now, these normative ethical principles are essentially the idealism behind a proper behavior that we should have, behavior that we should inculcate within ourselves. In the context of environmental management, what this entails is that normative ethical principles are the ideals that we base our actions on when we interact with the natural world. When we say normative ethical principles based on Islamic teaching, we will go back to the fundamentals, namely by looking at the two primary sources of Islam, which are the Holy Quran and also the prophetic traditions or the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as how these are translated into the corpus of the branches of Islamic knowledge, such as Usuluddin, Fiqh and Usul Fiqh, as well as Akhlaq. Now, most definitely, there are guiding principles that become the basis for the actions that Muslims should adhere to when it comes to managing, utilizing, as well as interacting with the natural world. And we know that the natural world, as we believe, is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact of the matter is that anything and everything involving the management and conservation of the environment, which include aspects of sustainability, are closely intertwined with the various branches of Islamic knowledge. Now, hopefully, Hajah Maslina, with today's discussion, within the time afforded to us, we can remind ourselves of the importance of these normative ethical principles, especially regarding the way we interact with the natural world and also the environment.
Right, inshallah. So now, may I ask you, how does nurturing nature relate to the Usuluddin?
Right. Usuluddin or Tawheed has a close relationship with matters pertaining to environmental preservation and conservation. One fundamental element in Usuluddin is that in Islam, we firmly believe that everything that exists, whether tangible or intangible, is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty Creator. Now, this is mentioned in verses 48 to 49 of Surah An-Nahl, which is translated thus: do they not look at God's creation, even among inanimate things, how their shadows turn around from the right to the left, prostrating themselves to God, and that is the humblest manner. And to God does obeisance all that is in the heavens and on earth, whether moving living creatures or the angels, for none are arrogant before their Lord. Now, this two verses actually bring the connotation that since Allah is the Almighty Creator, then all creations, including mankind, has the obligation to submit as well as serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, from the perspective of Usuluddin or Tawheed, we can summarize, therefore, that the rules of mankind towards the environment or the natural world are as follows. The first is to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is clear from verse 56 of Surah Az-Zariyat, which means I have only created jinns and men that they may serve me. The second role is as vicegerent of Allah and custodian to the world, as mentioned in verse 30 of Surah Al-Baqarah, which means, behold, your Lord says to the angels, I will create a vicegerent on earth. They said, will you place therein one who will make mischief therein and shed blood, while we do celebrate your praises and glorify your name? He said, I know what you know not. Now, this verse essentially highlights the fact that mankind has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be the custodian and also the vicegerent of Allah on this world. The third rule is to settle on and develop the world. In Surah Hud, verse 61, it is said to the effect that to the Thamud people we sent Salleh, one of their own brethren. He said, O my people, worship Allah, you have no other God but Him. It is He who has produced you from the earth and settled you therein. Then ask forgiveness of Him and turn to Him in repentance, for my Lord is always near, ready to answer. Now, this basically highlights the fact that when mankind has been put on the planet, we have to serve Allah, we have to be a servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time, we also need to develop the world according to the teaching of Islam so that it can be beneficial for the survival of mankind.
I see. Okay, what about fiqh and usul fiqh, Dr. Shaikh? How do we relate this field of knowledge to looking after the environment?
Right. If you think about it, fiqh is actually a field of knowledge under Islam which looks after the relationship between man and his creator, the relationship amongst mankind, and also when we say this, it involves relationship between ourselves and our family members and also our community members, as well as the relationship between man and our surrounding, which includes the natural world and the environment. Now, if you look at the many books on fiqh, one of the first chapters is actually on tahara, which is cleanliness, which actually involves water, which is an integral or an important component of the environment. Similarly, many of the discussions in fiqh, while focusing on specific acts of worship or ibadah, actually involve interactions between man and also the natural world. In terms of usul fiqh, especially under the branch of maqasid ash-shar'iyyah, which is the higher objectives of Islamic law, we can see how the daruriyat al-khams, or the five necessities, become an important basis for mankind's survival. And it also has to do with our interactions with the natural world. The first is, if we look at the environment, if we can consider and think that our action in looking after the environment is akin to protecting the religion. What this means essentially is that any acts of munkar or sins that we do onto the environment, for example, destroying or polluting the environment, is actually against the basis of religion and goes against the principle of khilafah or custodian. So in terms of protecting the religion, it is also obligatory upon us to ensure that we protect the environment. We do not create or do any actions that lead to fasad or destruction. With regards to the protection of life or hifzun nafs, we can relate this to the protection of the environment by looking at protecting the environment as an act that can also protect human lives. And we have discussed this before. We have said that mankind is a part of the environment, and we have a symbiotic relationship with the environment. So any fasad or any acts of destruction taking place in the natural world can certainly affect the lives of human beings. With regards to the protection of progeny, if we look after the environment, in essence, what we are doing is actually we are ensuring the survival of our future generation. As often being reminded to us, what we have today is in fact a trust upon us for us to look after so that our children and also our grandchildren and future generations can inherit them as they are. So therefore, we need to ensure that the environment is protected for the well-being and also for the survival of our future generations. The next aspect of the maqasid al-shar'iyyah is the protection of the mind. Now, if we think about it, one of the things that we often say about nature or the natural world is that it is very beautiful. It gives us a sense of calmness, a sense of tranquility. So the natural world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created indeed gives us all these senses. And this definitely, I think, helps us in looking after our own mental health. So by protecting the environment, that will ensure that we also protect our mental well-being. Finally, when we talk about protecting our property, hifzul mal, if we look at the natural world, Allah has created the world as a property that has been entrusted upon mankind to look after. Property is not necessarily just in the form of wealth, money, buildings, or perhaps even gold, but it also includes all the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is incumbent upon mankind to look after. So the environment is also a property that we have to look after in order to ensure that will fulfill the needs of hifzul mal, protecting the property. So this, I would say, is a summary of how fiqh relate to the environment.
Right. It is important to, get this understanding in our mind and our heart in, protecting the natural world. But it also must be translated into the right actions, equally important. So what role does akhlaq in Islam play in nurturing the natural world?
Right. Akhlaq is actually part of tasawwuf and has much to do with the natural world, as it involves how we actually interact with and how we actually treat the natural world. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent as the messenger of Allah to mankind to complete the akhlaq or noble character of mankind. Noble character or akhlaq is manifested in the form of amar ma'ruf, that is the call to do good deeds. When we do good deeds, it is not just to other human beings, but also to other creations and creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether they are living creatures or inanimate objects. Those who work hard towards protecting and looking after the environment are actually, to me, people who are actually, who have good character. If we can inculcate good character within ourselves, especially regarding our interaction with the environment, inshallah, this will be something that not only can help in ensuring our survival on this world, but also would serve as a way for us to carry out our duty and responsibility towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as both servant to Him and also custodian of the world. So in effect, if we can inculcate good character with regards to protecting the environment, simple things, even simple things like not littering or picking up litter on the street. This is actually a reflection of our akhlaq, and this is something that is commendable, and this is something that we should actually have inculcated within ourselves.
Right. So now, the Quran and Hadith most definitely provide a lot of guidance with regards to nurturing nature. Would you be able to explain further on this, please?
Right. Thank you, Hajah Mazlina. Well, all our discussions on usuluddin, on fiqh, on as well as usul fiqh, on akhlaq, these are actually discussions on the Shariat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Shariat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sourced from the Quran as well as the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we study the Quran, if we look at the prophetic traditions of our beloved Prophet, we can see that these two primary sources actually give much attention to the environment. Just to highlight something that I find very interesting, if you look at the names of the surahs of the Quran, some of the names of the surahs are actually named after creatures that can be found in the natural world. For example, animals. We have Al-Baqarah, heifer, Al-An'am, cattle, Al-Nahal, bee, Al-Ankabut, spider, Al-Naml, ants, Al-Fil, elephants. We also have the names of surah based on plants. For example, At-Tin, which refers to fig. Also inanimate objects in the natural world, such as Al-Kahf, cave, At-Tur, the mountain, and also Al-Hadid, iron, as well as celestial objects such as Al-Najam, the star, Al-Qamar, moon, and also Ash-Shams, the sun. There are also names of surahs based on natural phenomena. For example, An-Nur, the light, Ad-Dukhan, the smoke, Ad-Dhariyat, the winds that scatter, and also Ar-Ra'du, the thunder. So to me, if we look at these names, these are actually creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the natural world, as well as names of chapters in the Quran. Surely, if you think about it, there must be a reason for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to choose these as the names for the surahs. Definitely, they have their own secrets and meanings, but I believe one of the reasoning behind these names is that it can serve as a reminder for us, and also to create a sense of awareness amongst Muslims, especially for us to give serious attention to the environment and the natural world. As well as to ensure its sustainability and also to avoid any forms of destruction. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these names in the Quran, definitely there is great importance, and this is something that we should not we should not avoid from thinking. This is something that we should take heed and try to ensure that we give due attention.
Yes, inshallah. Thank you very much, Adisha, on the explanations. Now, how would you like to conclude, these two parts of nurturing nature guidance from Islam?
Right, Hajjah Mazlina. Basically, in essence, the basis for looking after the environment and the natural world is our morality and ethics. The Islamic guidance, whether we derive them from the field of usuluddin, or fiqh and usul fiqh, as well as akhlaq, actually revolves around how we carry out our responsibility as Khalifah of Allah in a way that is in line with Islam. We do not want to be like Qarun, who arrogantly proclaimed, as mentioned in verse 78 of Surah Al-Qasas, which means this wealth has been given to me because of a certain knowledge which I have. Qarun was very arrogant, and this is something that we should not emulate, especially with regards to how we use the natural world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. Instead, we should emulate what Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam said to the Queen of Saba, as mentioned in verse 40 of Surah An-Naml, to the effect that this is by the grace of my Lord to test me whether I am grateful or ungrateful. And if any is grateful, truly his gratitude is again for his own soul. But if any is ungrateful, truly my Lord is free of all needs, supreme in honor. So I think the example shown by Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam is that whatever that we have in the natural world for our use is actually by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is actually a test upon us whether we can utilize it in a proper manner as set by Islam, or we misuse and abuse them, or worse still, we become like Qarun. So I think this is a good reminder for us at this juncture of discussion, I believe, that we always take heed of the akhlaq, the morality, the ethical principles that is taught in Islam, translate them into our actions, especially when we interact with the environment and also the natural world.
Right, inshallah. Probably this is also the high time for us to contemplate on the situation today, and also, what we have done in our actions on nurturing nature, and take guidance from Islam in the end, inshallah. So we would like to thank you, Dr. Shaikh, and we will continue on our next topic with you next week, same time, same day, inshallah. Yeah?
Inshallah.
Okay, thank you very much then. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.